Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to dive into a really fascinating mystery that's just been hiding in plain sight. It's been over a decade since the phrase autonomous driving really hit the mainstream, right? Automakers and major suppliers basically bet their entire existence on self-driving systems. They poured unbelievable amounts of money into this, making us all feel like this sci-fi future was right around the corner. But here we are, over 10 years later, and it kind of feels like the entire industry hit this insurmountable roadblock and just ground to a complete halt.
So let's just get right into it. We really have to ask the multi-billion-dollar question here. If automakers have spent absolute fortunes on this tech for a decade, why exactly is the industry stuck in a massive deadlock? Like, why aren't we all reading books or taking naps while our cars commute for us by now? Well, surprisingly, the answer isn't about the software code or the cameras or the sensors failing. The tech is actually amazing. The real answer is a terrifying legal trap that the industry accidentally built for itself. To fully grasp this trap, we gotta look at how we actually measure progress. Back in the 2010s, the Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE, came up with those famous level 0 to level 5 autonomous driving stages. Basically, level 2 means your hands are on the wheel and you're paying attention. Level 3, that means you can safely read a book and let the car do the work. At first, this was just a way for engineers to talk to each other, but then it became the global standard. International law started catching up. In 2018, UN Regulation R79 was enacted for Level 2 steering, and then in January 2021, UN R157 was officially enacted to regulate Level 3. On paper, it looked like perfect, logical progress.
Now, philosophically, moving from level 2 to level 3 sounds like a pretty simple software upgrade, right? But to the engineers actually building these cars on the ground, that gap was a profound chasm. Why? It all comes down to legal liability. Up to level 2, the car system is legally considered just an assist device. If something goes wrong, it's 100% the human driver's fault. But literally, the second you cross that line into level 3, the manufacturer takes over all the legal responsibility for any accidents. And that is a massive, terrifying shift. Just think about the real-world implications for a second. If a level 3 system is driving and an accident happens that results in casualties, the company has to shoulder astronomical financial liability. It's awesome to develop new tech, sure, but from a business perspective, who on earth is going to risk the survival of their entire company on a single software glitch? The fear of company-ruining lawsuits absolutely terrified manufacturers. Taking on all that risk was a gamble that could wipe them out overnight. So, just how paralyzing did this fear become? Well, because of this immense legal terror, do you know how many vehicles have ever managed to get that official UN Level 3 approval? 2. Exactly 2 vehicle models in the entire world. That single digit right there perfectly shows how impossible this regulatory hurdle was for the broader auto industry to actually clear. Let's look at what those 2 vehicles actually were. In December 2021, Mercedes-Benz got approval in Germany for their Drive Pilot, and earlier, in November 2020, Honda got approval in Japan for their Sensing Elite. But look at the extreme limitations they had to agree to just to get that stamp of approval. The Mercedes system? It was only allowed to operate during the day, in clear weather, on a highway with a physical median, and only in traffic jams moving under 60 kilometers per hour. I mean, imagine paying top dollar for a cutting-edge self-driving car that you can only legally use during a daytime traffic jam. And the Honda approval was literally limited to a mere 100 lease vehicles. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality of Level 3 up to this point. These were not scalable solutions for everyday drivers. They were PR stunts. Highly restrictive, heavily guarded deployments meant to be symbolic showcases of a company's technical prowess, not a genuine mass-market reality. The strictness of the regulations essentially forced automakers to build concept cars for the road instead of actual consumer products.
And honestly, if you think about it, it makes complete sense. We actually have a great perspective from an engineer who was working in Germany during these exact project reviews. They noted that the system performance was always excellent. Most features worked beautifully. But the prevailing question in the room was always, look, no one can guarantee 100% perfection, and since we take the blame for accidents, how can we possibly approve this for mass production? Because of this unresolvable tension between great engineering and impossible legal standards, the whole industry just fell into a massive deadlock. Enter the regulatory hero of our story, UN R171, better known as DCAS, or Driver Control Assistance Systems. Adopted by the UN in March 2024 and officially effective in September 2024, this regulation was specifically designed to break that exact deadlock. DCAS allows the car to highly assist the driving process with incredibly advanced features, But, and here is the absolute genius part, it explicitly states that the legal liability strictly remains with the human driver, exactly like it did back in Level 2.
This brings us to what we can playfully call the regulatory moonwalk. It's incredibly ironic. To actually move autonomous driving tech forward, regulators had to take a literal step backward. Level 3 was the dream, but because the liability standards were so impossibly strict that no one could even enter the market, regulators had to reverse course. By stepping back down to driver liability, they essentially gave the entire automotive industry room to breathe again.
For automakers and software developers, DCAS is just a monumental victory. It's exactly what they needed. The legal liability stays safely with you, the human driver. Yet, because the technical constraints are loosened up, automakers can now aggressively push their newest software to offer Level 3-like convenience to consumers. They can finally deploy their absolute best, most advanced driving software without the paralyzing fear of astronomical, company-ending lawsuits hanging over their heads.
However, regulators didn't just hand over a blank check here. There is one absolute, non-negotiable condition for using these new DCAS features. The car must be equipped with a mandatory driver monitoring system, or DMS. Because you, the human driver, are legally responsible, the car has to constantly track your gaze and your eye movements. If your eyes leave the road for too long, the system knows, and it'll demand you pay attention. It's basically the ultimate compromise. You get robot-like assistance, but the robot is always watching to make sure you're still supervising. Because the UN provided this incredibly pragmatic, stepping-stone regulation, the road ahead is suddenly wide open. The speed of technical development and real-world application is about to accelerate dramatically. Companies dealing with autonomous driving software, high-definition mapping, and driving data, like Hyundai AutoEver and 42dot, finally have clear, workable guidelines. The engineers who were previously chained down by all that legal risk, they've been unleashed, and they're going to be busier than ever bringing these advanced features right to our driveways.
So this brings us to a really fascinating place in the evolution of transportation. The DCS breakthrough absolutely solved a crippling corporate deadlock. But it leaves us, the consumers, with a very interesting dynamic. If your car is practically driving itself, like a highly advanced robot, handling the steering, the braking, the navigation, but you are legally required to watch the road and take all the blame if it makes a mistake, who is really in the driver's seat? It's a provocative question for sure, and it's one we're all going to have to answer as this new wave of technology hits the streets.
Thank you for listening. It was presented by HK Automotive.